Alrighty, we'll call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is to review the agenda for additions or deletions. Anything, Valerie?
Just that there will not be a warrant or liquor licenses tonight.
There won't be a what?
Warning or liquor license.
Okay.
A warrant, pay requests or liquor licenses.
Those are off.
Correct.
Yeah. All right, overview of Zoom meeting operations and procedures. Please ask for one of the board members to recognize you before you speak, mute your microphones, and wait to be recognized. Thank you. Public forum. Opportunity for citizens not on the agenda to briefly share comments or concerns. Anyone? Seeing none, hearing none. Annual Police District Public Informational Meeting.
Okay,
Take it over, Bruce.
sure. So I forget that sometimes people don't read the budget or see the reports. So I was going to start off by just reminding people how many employees we have. At this point in time, we have 3 full-time police officers, and we have 3 part-time police officers, but our part-time officers don't necessarily work hours every week. It's more like per diem when they can. One of them is working every other weekend in the mornings to help cover some of the shifts. So this budget for 2022-2023 has 4 full-time positions. One of those full-time positions would be, we would be utilizing a COPS grant for. We were one of 2 agencies in the state of Vermont to receive that grant. That was due to the efforts of Officer Josh Turner and the former treasurer Jen Myers. They wrote for that, and we were successful in receiving it. So the overall budget went up 10.7%, but with the grant funding, what would be raised by taxes actually went down by 0.1%. Our calls for service have been pretty much the same for the last 3 years. Although we have been seeing an increase, like everybody else, in calls for service dealing with mental health issues and or substance use. We have been very fortunate that the officers that we have now focus on compassion and empathy when we're for these types of calls, or all of our calls. But it's extremely important when you're dealing with somebody that's in crisis. And although we don't have the training that mental health workers receive, we have enough initial training and experience over the years we've been doing this, that we've been successful in the initial response to calls for service dealing with people that are in crisis, to include that building relationships with some of our residents. There was one incident where a resident was riding with their counselor from Middlebury to Bristol, and for whatever reason, they weren't comfortable and didn't feel safe and wanted to get out of the vehicle in the middle of a downpour. And the counselor, from previous experience with our officers and that person, knew we had good rapport, so they called the Bristol Police Department, and we went out to River Road and provided a ride home. So I can't thank the officers enough for their response to these type calls, and especially when we're seeing more and more of them. Not sure if anybody's got any specific questions, or if there's something else they would like to hear about the police department. I'll be more than happy to answer questions.
So Article 1 in the police department warning is the only article that there is to vote on for police district voters, will the voters of the town of Bristol Police District adopt the proposed 2022-2023 fiscal year budget in the amount of $504,579, with $405,062 to be raised by taxes through a rate set by the select board on the 2022 grand list of the property tax in the area and included within the district sufficient to raise $405,062. So that is the only article on the police docket this year.
I did forget to mention, and I should, because it's the efforts of the officers, that our budget since 2017 has gone down. We are 5%, I think it's 5.4% less than what the budget was in 2017. And with the grant funded position, the requirement of the grant is that we have to keep the position for the 4th year. That's the only requirement. If we want to keep that position beyond that, that's obviously something the town would have to decide. But there is some funding in our undesignated fund balance, which we do not know the total yet because the audit's not finished. But there should be enough there to help offset an increase for that 4th year, or possibly beyond the 4th year, depending upon what the fund balance is.
And the majority of that fund balance, the majority of that undesignated fund balance came from not having, it's from a salary line due to not having officers, correct?
Correct, yes. When somebody left, we didn't fill the position immediately.
Yeah, you can notice, you can see in this expense column, comparing 2021, what was budgeted and the actual, you can see the difference of what was budgeted, but what was actually spent.
And there again, that's due to not having the labor force that we budgeted for.
Right. And that difference, that surplus or that savings is what it constitutes the undesignated fund balance.
And for folks tuning in on Zoom tonight, in the chat, I've put a link to the town report for this year, the PDF on the town website. And I've also put in details for the police department report. That's on page 70. And the police department budget page is on page 43.
Shall we switch to the vehicle reserve fund?
I got just a question, Bruce, just more. Show that budget again, if you could, Valerie or Ian.
Sure. Yep.
The overtime and shift differential, what was budgeted and what was spent, it's like 16, almost 16,000, 15,500, 15,400, somewhere. Is that because they weren't full-time, so we had to have the part-timers come in?
So,
I'm looking at what was budgeted was 31,981, overtime shift and shift differential. And we spent 47,374 last 1920.
yeah, so the part-time filled in when they could, but this was because it was a full-time person that was covering
Okay,
the overtime.
well, that's when we lost an officer because it happened also this 2021 year too.
Yeah, I think each budget year over the last two budget years, somebody left in the middle of the budget and weren't immediately replaced.
Yeah.
Okay,
In fact, in 2020, for a 6-month period, there was one full-time police officer.
And it just so happens that that was our chief.
Right.
And we should probably publicly thank him for working above and beyond. countless hours that he put in just because he wanted things to work. And I know there were a number of days when he would have gladly taken the day off if he could have.
And even when an officer is not scheduled, so to speak, they're often on call, which also limits what they can do in their private time and where they can be. So that's not necessarily evident in the budget.
The only person I have, and I noticed it up there.
If folks have questions, feel free to use the raise hand little emoji thing. It's in the bottom of your screen under reactions. You can also post questions in the chat as well.
Any questions for Bruce? Any questions for us?
Here comes another. So this is the Police Vehicle Reserve Fund. And one change that this reflects is replacing a vehicle every other year instead of every 2 years. And the goal to invest more in hybrid vehicles. And here's what one of them looks like now.
You mean every 3 years instead of every 2 years?
Every 2
Every
years
2 years
instead of
Right, every 2 years. She said every 2 years instead of every other year.
every 3.
Right.
Whatever
The
this
current
says.
vehicle, to be clear, the current vehicle is not a hybrid, correct?
Correct. We do not have any hybrids in service at this time.
And that's
there
one
again,
reason why you see a price increase.
yeah, but price will dictate.
And possibly the higher price might be offset by lower fuel costs.
Lower fuel costs, and it will put another vehicle in the rotation, so we should be getting less miles on them, so they should be worth something when we go to get rid of them. That's the
Good point.
Still
intent.
getting rid of them in
Right.
6 years.
Yes,
The oldest one will be 6 years when it goes down.
Correct. But it shouldn't be as many miles as and as much wear and tear.
But we will probably have to budget for a charging station.
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah, we did.
Or apply for a grant to get one for a charging station.
there is one right there where it parks, but I don't know if it's, I don't know how it's metered.
I thought it was free.
Huh?
I thought it was free.
Well, it goes through Bristol Works meter. I'm sure he wouldn't, I'm sure he wouldn't feel that way.
Well,
Or they
we will certainly include one in the design for a new police station located somewhere in town.
How many years do we have left on the current lease?
2, 3.
2023 the lease is up. So
2023, so so we only have 1
2020,
year?
I believe it's just 1 year. I don't even know.
I think it's 2023.
We only have a year left?
But I believe the landlord is willing to do a year-to-year arrangement to buy us more time.
Questions.
Well, we got about 12 minutes to kill before the next meeting starts. So if there's any questions or anything you'd like to talk about, now would be the time.
Do we need to close this meeting? or no?
Can we?
Do we need to close this meeting? or no?
No, we just, I don't believe.
So in case
And
folks
yet-
haven't had a chance to look at the police department report in your town reports, it has a lot of useful information in it. Describes cooperation with other departments, and other pieces of information that might be of interest.
Give you a little bit of an update on the grant that we're currently writing for.
Sure.
Is going to be in the area of $43,000 or $44,000 to replace the radios that we're looking at. We're not going to include anything other than the radios, so if there's something needs to be cut, as we're asking for 4 out of the 6 radios that we currently have, so. And again, Josh Turner is the one that's working on the grants, and he's been doing a great job with that. And besides Josh helping with the grants, Francis has been helping to update our policies, which I have not had time to do since 2020. And we hope to have those current, and we are using the model policies from Vermont Cities of Leagues and Towns, as we're a member of that.
You know, Porter, we've probably got time for you to run cookies down here to us if you are so inclined.
So speaking of Josh, Bruce, is he the one who does the Facebook posts, the social media posts?
He does, he does some of them.
Some of them. Well, in general, I think they've been very effective and creative and very useful. So I certainly appreciate it. And also the messaging on the speed signs coming into town is delightful if you're going the speed limit. You complimented. And I've received a number of requests from people outside the community who are interested in getting similar signs installed in their communities, and they want to know, how did we do it? So Bristol is setting a really nice example for that approach.
And I know, I'm talking to 3 people up on the North Street area, they said they see a difference. That sign up there, they see a difference. People coming into town.
This is Jennifer Wagner jumping in. I wanted to say hi and also commend the Bristol Police Department for the Halloween trick or trunk participation. It was really creative and well done, and a really wonderful addition to Bristol's Halloween celebration.
Yeah, that was another idea from Josh. Josh has been very great about things like that. And these signs we have coming into town, I think there's 19 characters. So if somebody has a message that they would like to share.
Appropriate message.
Well, of course, it's got to be appropriate, but we're always looking for different ideas. People do notice when we change it, and that's the whole purpose of those signs, is just to get people to remind them that they're in the village and they should be slowing down.
It's great to get those positive affirmations when you come into town, when you're driving the speed limit.
Okay, yeah. Bruce, I did see that contract has gone up for next year.
Yes.
Is that because of more response or just more
Um,
cooperation?
More cooperation, a slight increase in response, but our cost goes up each year.
Okay.
So I recommend that each year we should be watching it and increasing appropriately.
There's a note in the chat from Porter Knight that says, more kudos to police. Appreciate the truck being more visibly marked. Thank you for being responsive to that feedback.
We are open to any recommendations or suggestions. You can either call the police department or send an email, or when you see me walking downtown, grab onto me or any of the police officers. Just if they're in the middle of a traffic stop, we prefer that you wait till after we're finished.
Sit there and wait behind them.
Bruce, can you touch on the program where people can bring expired medications to properly dispose of them?
Yes, thanks to Jesse Brooks with United Way of Addison County, we have a drop box in our lobby. So anybody that has unused medications, just stop by the police department. We open the door, you go in and drop your medication, unused medication in the box. We're currently working with Lamoille County, and when they need the box is full, they stop by and pick that up and turn it over to the DEA for disposal.
Interesting. Do you know if it's common for police departments to have that kind of program?
It is here in Vermont.
Okay. Good.
Another addition that was made to the town website for the police department page was adding in a compliment/complaint form, which you can fill out entirely online and it gets submitted to the police department. We've also have sort of the details of the officers that work for the department as well and their email addresses so they can be reached.
Compliments are preferred, of course. Ian, can you pull up a picture, an image of that form? I can't track it down to share the screen.
Sure. Yeah, you can, here, let me see if I can do this. So on the town page, on the left-hand side here, you can click on Police Department, brings you to this page, which is the main page for Police Department on the Bristol Town website, and there's a link right here. You can click on that, and that will take you to this form, which is part of the the town webpage, and you can fill in the details here, and it can be submitted to the police department.
And maybe we can add a link to the PDF version of it, like the brochure style.
Okay, yeah, we can do that.
And Ian, I think you need to get with Bruce and put Francis, our other full-time officer, on there. He's not on.
Thank you. Yes, I will do that. Thank you, Joe.
I'm going to do a quick share before we switch gears. I tracked it down what I was looking for. This is the brochure form of the complaint or compliment form. And it's got the mission statement and some other information. And then details of what you want to bring to the department's attention or to compliment them about.
That's available at the town office and also at the police department.
And I'll add a link to this PDF form to the page. Countdown to 7 o'clock.
And we're getting close.
Looks like
Alrighty,
we're,
it is 7 p.m. So we will move on to the annual town meeting, public informational meeting, and I will turn it over to Jennifer Wagner to handle this portion of the meeting.
great. Thank you very much, Speaker. Well, I call this meeting to order of the Town of Bristol Informational Session, February 28th, of 2022. I welcome everyone. I'm really glad to see so many people here participating tonight, and I expect even more people are going to jump on and join us. I, too, am exhausted of this pandemic. I wish we were all together in Holly Hall, listening to the hubbub of friends and neighbors greeting neighbors, and as Porter Knight mentioned, eating the delectable baked goods that the Bristol Recreation Department would have out for us. Alas, we are yet again here in this Zoom forum, but really glad you've joined us. I am Jennifer Wagner. I'm an attorney at Marsh & Wagner, and if I look familiar, it's because you've probably seen me playing trumpet with the Bristol Band on the bandstand. Anybody who's unmuted, please mute right now. Your sound can be heard by everybody, so make sure you've got the mute on. As I was saying, if I look familiar, you saw me in the band. Even though I sat in the back, I was the one who always showed up late, and I sat in the back. And I had to go through everybody to get to the back, so you probably would have noticed me. Anyways, I would like to introduce the Select Board now. Not everybody has attended a Select Board meeting and may recognize our Select Board members. So I am going to give a shout out to each member of the Select Board and ask them to please wave their hand to say hello and just say something so that the camera will go to them and focus. So I'm going to start with the chair, John Peeker Heffernan. If you could say hi and wave your hand.
Look at that. It went right to Joel, left me right out. Come on. The owl doesn't want to hear me. Woo, there we go. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming.
They can't see you talking, so wave your hand.
They should be able to hear me.
I know, but they don't know it's coming from you.
Last Monday, we couldn't see Joel and we had a disembodied hand, so we'll do the opposite. So right now I see Joel Bouvier. If you could, good, thank you, raise your hand. Fantastic. And Michelle Purley, are you here somewhere?
I'm here next to Peeker. It just doesn't like to see me either.
All right, let's give a big wave of your hand so that we can see in the back of it. Perfect. Can you do the YMCA now? Okay. Darla Cynical, if you could say hello and wave.
Hello, everyone. Good evening.
Fantastic. And our Vice Chair, Ian Albertson, if you could also say hello and wave.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for attending this evening.
Fantastic. And then we have our wonderful town staff. Valerie, if you could say hello and wave.
Hello, welcome.
Perfect. And Sharon, where are you? If you could say hello and wave.
Hi, don't forget to vote tomorrow.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to...
Town Treasurer Anthony Delmonico is with us as well.
Anthony, could you say hello and wave?
Hello. My camera's not working currently, so I apologize.
That's all right. We're really glad that you are here tonight. So I'm going to explain the format and some basic rules. And then after that, I'm going to invite our three legislators who should be here tonight to each speak briefly to everyone who's shown up tonight. So the format tonight, I'm going to be reading the warned articles, and we're going to give everyone an opportunity to ask questions or make comments or share comments on those warned articles. Unfortunately, this is not a town meeting, so no one can make an amendment to the articles. We won't be debating the articles tonight, and we're not trying to reach a consensus on the articles tonight. As Sharon just said, voting tomorrow. It will be, the polls are open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at Holly Hall. Sharon, will it be upstairs in Holly Hall, or will people need to go downstairs to the town clerk's office? You're muted, Sharon. Okay, still muted, Sharon. We'll come back to that answer.
No,
There you
it's
go.
upstairs. I'm sorry. If I'm not on my picture, the computer doesn't recognize the Alt-A that's supposed to let me on.
All right. I won't put you on the spot again that way. So I'm going to give just a brief reminder of Zoom rules. Your microphone should be muted unless you are talking. Otherwise, the microphone will pick up the barking dog or a person in the background or wrinkling candy wrappers, and it will take this microphone away from the person who is speaking. So please make sure you mute your microphone. If you're calling in on your telephone, you can use *6 to both mute and unmute your microphone. Please only speak after you've been recognized by me, the moderator. One person will speak at a time. In order to be recognized by me, raise your hand, or as Ian referred to during the police district meeting, if you go to the bottom of your screen, there's a button called Reactions. When you click that button, at the very bottom is a bar that says Raise Hand. If you hit that Raise Hand, it'll put a little yellow icon in the corner of your screen that we see here. And when you click it again, it'll take that hand down. You can also use the chat box to ask a question or say that you have a question and want to be recognized. I'm asking that people don't answer other people's questions in the chat box or begin a conversation in the chat box, because really, this is a forum where I want everyone to be able to hear what's going on, and there are people participating by telephone who can't see the chat box, so they're going to be left out of the chat box. Plus, we're required to keep minutes of this meeting, and things in the chat box are not going to be kept well in a meeting record. And I will take time to look at the chat box and read. Ian is my right-hand man here. He's going to be searching for hands and pointing out to me when somebody has a question or if there's something in the chat box. When you speak, I want each person to please state your first name, your last name, and your town of residence. And the reason I'm asking for town of residence tonight is because this is a select board meeting. And as a select board meeting, anyone is welcome to speak, whether they are a resident and voter in the town of Bristol or not. So it's important that we know who is speaking and where they're from. If you are a member of an organization and speaking as an affiliate of that organization or on their behalf, please also state the name of the organization that you're speaking on behalf of. All right. If you have technical problems, I suggest you ask a teenager. We, could do our best, maybe put a question in the chat box or a private question to someone, Ian, but only the simplest of questions. We're really not technologically equipped to help you with that. It would be helpful if you could enter your own name onto the box on the screen where you see yourself on video, or don't see yourself if you just have your name rather than the person whose account you're using. If you're logged into your teenage daughter's account, you can change the name by going to the 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner of the video box where you see yourself. Click on those 3 dots, go to the bottom, and you'll see something that says rename. Click that, and you can type in your own name. That's helpful for us as well. Always, I want to encourage that we have civil discussions here tonight. All views are important, and everybody should be heard. Address your comments to me as the moderator. Don't make personal comments to each other. And I'm going to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to speak at least once. So please, after you've spoken, I'll give you another chance to speak again if you want to, but only after everyone else has spoken. Keep your comments short if you can. The select board does have a couple of agenda items that they're going to cover after the meeting. And I did say all views could be heard, but we only need to hear them expressed once. If someone's already expressed what you wanted to share, please leave time for others to speak. And also, there's no such thing as a dumb question. If you're thinking it, someone else probably already has that question. Okay, and without further ado, I'm going to invite our legislators who are here tonight, Chris Bray, Marie Cordes, and Ruth Hardy, to give us a few minutes each and gives us some legislative updates. I'm going to leave it to them to decide which one is going to speak first. Apparently, whoever can get the unmute button on first.
I would say ladies before gentlemen. So
I would say I went first in Starksboro, so I'm going to give someone else a chance.
Oh my goodness, you're both being too polite. I'll go first. My name is Ruth Hardy, and I am one of the 2 state senators. And I am joining you tonight from East Middlebury. Thank you for allowing me to join your meeting and speak at your meeting. Senator Bray and I will both give updates about what's going on in the Senate, and I'll cover sort of my subject areas, and he will cover his, and then Rep. Cordes will talk about what's going on in the House. We just passed a major budget adjustment bill, which usually is kind of a sleepy bill that just tweaks our current year budget. But this year, because of all of the ARPA funds and federal funding, that bill included pretty significant funding. The largest chunk went toward workforce retention and recruitment grants for essential workforce in healthcare and social services, including childcare, hospitals, our designated mental health agencies, home health agencies, and that sort of area, in order to make sure that we have sufficient staffing in areas that have pretty severe staffing shortages. So that passed last week and should be getting money out into the field. There's also some funding for housing and other areas as well. We've passed major housing legislation, and we are working on reapportionment or redistricting for this session, and also a bill related to overhauling our teacher and state worker pension program. In my area, I serve on the Senate Finance Committee and the Senate Health and Welfare Committee. In the Health and Welfare Committee, we're working on a number of bills, but one of the major bills we're working on is a hospital sustainability bill, because our hospitals are really struggling. And we're working to include a very large community engagement portion of that. So after that passes, which I hope it does, I will certainly be getting back to you on how you can work on being part of that process. And finally, the last thing I wanted to mention to you is a major change in our school funding formula, which we have been working on for a number of years. And I co-chaired a committee in the off session to work on changing what we know as our pupil weights, which is how we count students in our school funding formula, particularly students living in poverty, students who have English language learner needs, students in very small schools and very rural schools, and also high school and middle school students, and weighting them differently in our formula. This will be a major change. I have spoken to the Mount Abe School Board and the superintendent and various groups about the impact it will have on your school district, and I'm really happy to talk to anybody who wants more information about that. Finally, I just want to give a shout out that Senator Bray and I are having a town or a sort of senator forum on Thursday night at 7 o'clock. And I'll be sending out to my list and putting on Front Porch Forum the link if you want to join us to have a more in-depth conversation with us. So that's it for me. Thank you for having me, and I'll turn it over to Senator Bray.
Thanks, Senator Hardy. My name's Christopher Bray. I live right here in Bristol Village on North Street, and it's a pleasure to be virtually with so many neighbors. I'm like all of you. I'm looking forward to the return to Holly Hall, and I hope that is next year. So as Senator Hardy mentioned, in the Senate, you serve on 2 committees, and it's been, I serve with her as well on Senate Finance in the afternoon, but in the morning for the last 8 years, I chair Senate Natural Resources and Energy, and which I feel very fortunate to be working in, because we have so many challenges and so many really genuinely good opportunities to make progress in that area. So one of the things I think year after year, you've heard me talk to you about clean air, clean water, especially clean water. We have ongoing challenges with keeping our streams and rivers clean, and then the lake into which they all flow. And the very positive news in that area is, yes, we've been making some progress, not as fast as anyone would like, but because of the federal government grants, we're really going to be making unprecedented level of funding to help everything from sort of improving green spaces and planting trees along rivers, sort of that natural infrastructure, to upgrading wastewater treatment facilities and storm drainage and all the rest. And Bristol actually is going to be participating in some of that work. So, as well as other towns in Addison County. The other thing that is in the background, I think that everyone's so aware of, is climate change. And the principal driver of climate change is burning fossil fuels, sending them up into the air. It changes the climate. And so how do we take steps to address that? We're doing it in a few different ways. One is last year we passed the first year, and now we are developing further a program we call Weatherization for All, which takes our old state goal of weatherizing homes. We've done roughly 30,000 in 20 years, and we're saying we need to really pick up that pace. We want to do an additional 90,000 homes by 2030. So we're going to be doubling and doubling again the rate at which we do that work. And the good news is that for anyone who weatherizes their home, they end up with improved indoor air quality and health, fewer days of work missed, lower energy bills, and more comfortable living. And then meanwhile, on top of it, saving money and using less fuel that causes climate change. So it is, sometimes I think politicians say win, win, win a little too readily, but in this case, it's an entirely positive program, and look forward to continuing to grow that program on behalf of Vermonters. So it's an exciting thing to be doing. The other thing is that I'll just say briefly, we did an Act 250 bill this year. We just voted it out on Friday, and it seeks to do two things. One, it aims at helping the developed areas of Vermont that have done the planning to develop more housing in developed areas already, like town centers and downtowns, et cetera. That has two purposes. One is increasing the amount of affordable housing we have. And two, it takes pressure off of just spreading out of towns and cities and slowly eating up more and more of the green spaces, forests and farmlands that we all appreciate as part of what makes Vermont such a beautiful and special place to live. And last, I'll mention, none of these should be called last, but we also passed an environmental justice bill out on Friday. And what that aims to do is it recognizes that the benefits of state investment don't flow evenly to every person in town. And there are certain areas where we see people receive less investment. Those fall into three communities that are identified in the bill. And those are lower income Vermonters tend to receive fewer services, as do members of Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities, as well as people who are not native speakers of English and have some limited language proficiency. So we want to make sure that communities that don't necessarily get even treatment by the state, that the state has a way of recognizing that and seeking to balance the tables so that everyone is treated fairly and well. There's a lot more going on in there, but I'm going to stop now because I know you have a whole town meeting ahead. So thanks so much for the opportunity to talk with you. As we unmask, I look forward to seeing more of you on the street. All right, bye-bye for now.
Good evening, everyone. I am Representative Mari Cordes. I live in Lincoln. Thank you so much for having us here tonight. I'm going to pop my email in the chat box. Please reach out. I'm just going to touch lightly on a number of topics that we're working on in the House, and in particular in the committee that I'm in, House Healthcare. And in the House of Representatives, we only have one committee. And the number of things that Senator Hardy mentioned about healthcare, we are also working on in-house healthcare, so I won't go into great detail about that. But to start with, Yes, we are working on workforce. I'm a member of a subgroup working on nursing workforce in particular, and increasing wages for nursing faculty, and a number of other programs to make sure we not only increase spaces for nursing students, but that we're focusing on retention of existing staff, including and especially for community mental health. Both the nursing workforce and the primary care workforce and our mental health system, we're all struggling as far as retaining healthcare professionals before the pandemic, and it's just gotten so much worse. So we're paying a lot of attention to that. Also working on hospital sustainability. I have 2 bills in working their way through my committee and also will be in the Senate. One is on, I think you've heard me talk about the issues, some of the issues that pharmacy benefit managers have created that, among other things, have caused our independent local pharmacies to go out of business. So we're taking a serious look at that. We are going to make progress this year. And so my bill, I think it's H353, is going to be heading over to the Senate soon. Also a bill helping those of us living in Vermont deal with medical debt by setting minimum requirements for healthcare facilities for their financial assistance policies. And it would also give patients certain protections against medical debt. And speaking of medical debt, there's a federal bill that the House just passed a bill out that ensures state compliance with, and it's the Federal No Surprises Act. So if you, for example, are in an emergency and you need to see your you need to see a provider, or you have to have emergency surgery, and let's say the anesthesiologist is not in your insurance network, they're out of network, you would have been charged that full bill. So the Federal No Surprises Act and the work that we have done in the House make sure that you are not responsible for that entire bill now. There's also significant funding from ARPA to help those of you that are enrolled in the individual market can move to Vermont Health Connect and potentially have some significant savings. And I'm going to pop the link to Vermont Health Connect in the chat. So if you have any questions about that, either go to the Vermont Health Connect or the Office of the Health Advocate would also have some great resources for you about anything to do with healthcare, health insurance. You may not have known, but Vermont's currently only one of 2 Northeast states without hearing aid coverage. And we're now creating a new benchmark plan that will be active. We're going to submit to Centers for Medicaid and Medicare for the plan year 2024. So we've got a little ways to go before it's actualized, but it will include hearing benefits in the essential health benefit that are required for health insurance plans. So you'll be able to get hearing aids and an annual exam, and there's no age requirements for that, just medical necessity. I'm so grateful to the House Ways and Means Committee for putting forward a Vermont child tax credit. As many of you may know, the federal child tax credit lifted many families out of poverty, was a huge help in many ways, and that expired. Vermont will have our own child tax credit now. Still needs to make its way through the legislature and get signed by the governor, but we're confident about that. last few things, a lot of energy work happening, a lot of money in transportation, in grants and loans for upgrading our electric vehicle charging stations, the numbers of them. Also, a lot of money going into roads. And I would like to focus on when I get back to the State House on making sure that there is enough municipal funding for road projects that, especially for smaller towns, often don't have money to do bridge and road work. So I'll be working on that. And the last thing I'll end with is the clean heat standard is making its way through. And that's a big topic too. And it's very challenging. It follows some of the same or similar practices and incentives that we used in the electric part of our energy system in Vermont. So it's a hot topic and happy to talk more with you about it. Again, thank you so much. It's really good to see everyone, even in a little square on the screen. And please do reach out. I hope you're all doing well.
Great. Thank you so much, Representative Portis and Senator Hardy and Senator Bray for joining us and being with us here tonight. I'm going to move on and I'm going to begin reading the
Jacob Elder as well.
Oh, where is he?
Or Caleb Elder, I'm sorry.
Caleb Elder, yes. And Caleb Elder, if you are here, I want to give you your chance to speak. I hadn't seen you earlier.
No, maybe not.
All right, I know we had been expecting him. If he shows up later, if somebody notices, please point it out, and we will take a break from reading the warrant articles and give him an opportunity to speak.
Super.
Great. Thank you, Valerie. All right, I'm going to get to reading the warrant articles. Before I do that, I just want to say thank you to the person who is knitting here tonight. It just wouldn't feel like a town meeting without somebody knitting. So thank you. I feel so much happier. What I'm going to do is read each article out loud. Because this is not a town meeting, I won't be asking anybody to move the article or second the article, and I won't be rereading the article and then asking for debate. Instead, I'm going to read each article once out loud and then open up the floor for questions and comments. I noticed some people joined us after my initial comments. The way to be recognized is to either raise your hand or there is a motion reaction button at the bottom. Hit that and there's a raise your hand button. You can put something into the comments. And I also want to say that I failed to recognize a few people who are part of the town who are here. And we've got our Record Director, Meredith McFarland, somewhere here. Our Assistant Rec Director, Alex, Mahavix. I'm sorry. Thank you. I got that correct. And our lister, Patty King, as well. All right, getting started. Article 1. To elect by Australian ballot the following town officers as required by law. 1 select board member for a 3-year term, 1 select board member for a 2-year term, 2 library trustees for a 3-year term, 1 school board member for a 2-year term, and 1 school board member for a 3-year term for Mount Abraham Unified School District, 1 moderator for a 1-year term, 1 first constable for a 1-year term, 1 second constable for a 1-year term, 1 lister for a 2-year term, and 1 lister for a 3-year term. Does anyone have any questions or comments about that first article? All right, I'm not seeing any. And I want to mention that unlike a town meeting where after I've read an article and I move on to another article, you can go back and ask a question about something that I've previously read here. The conversation is not closed. I recognize because of the technological limitations, sometimes it takes a while to get off that mute button and speak up. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read Article 2. Will the voters of the town of Bristol vote that all real property taxes payable in installments shall bear interest at a rate of 3/4 of 1% per month or fraction thereof for the first 3 months, and thereafter 1 1/4% per month or fraction thereof from the due date of each installment, with the payment of the real property taxes and interest to the town treasurer for the town's fiscal year period of July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023, real property taxes being due in 2 equal installments on November 15th, 2022 and April 15th, 2023 by physical delivery to the town office before midnight on that date. Are there any questions or comments on Article 2? I see some people waving, but I don't think that means a hands up for a question. Just waving to neighbors at town meeting. Excellent. All right, not hearing any questions or comments, I am going to move on to Article 3. Will the town limit the amount of the penalty charged by the collector of delinquent taxes for payment made after the due date for payment to 4% of the tax collected pursuant to 32 Vermont statutes annotated section 1674, subsection 3, subsection A? Any questions or comments? All right, not seeing any, I'm going to move on to Article 4. Will the voters set the salaries that shall be paid to the members of the Select Board at the same as fiscal year 2021, being $500 plus $15 per meeting and $25 per meeting for the chair? Any questions or comments on Article 4? All right, not seeing any questions or comments, I will move on to Article 5. Article 5, will the voters adopt the proposed 2022-2023 fiscal year Public Works Highway Fund operating budget in the amount of $830,770 with $728,798 to be raised by taxes through a tax rate set by the Select Board on the 2022 grand list sufficient to raise $728,798. The town report, if you didn't pick up a copy of it at the local town offices, is available online at the Town of Bristol website. And I'm not sure, Ian, if you've put a link to it in the comments, you might also be able to get it that way so that you can take a look at that operating budget as proposed. Any questions or comments?
I'm also able to post or at least share the screenshots or what we can see on the screen. I can share my screen of the budgets if folks would like to see that.
I think let's hold off on sharing that, Valerie, unless we get into a discussion, and then it becomes helpful for everybody to be on the same page and looking at something. So does anybody have any questions or comments on the Highway Department operating budget?
I put a link in the chat, Jennifer, as well as page 26 for that particular budget.
Great. Thank you so much, Ian.
If I could jump a little bit, at some point, if we could circle back and recognize the dedication in the town report.
Would you like to do that right now?
Whenever it's appropriate.
Go for it.
Well, if you want to go do that as moderator.
Sure, I'd be happy to, and very proud to. The dedication in the town report this year is to our long-term moderator, Fred Baser. Fred Baser has served the town of Bristol in many different ways, and one of them being moderator for the past, I believe, 3 decades. He's been a wonderful long-term servant who has guided the town through many a meeting and many a debate with great aplomb, civility, good humor. Thank you.
I like that picture.
That's a wonderful picture. So please do take a moment to read. It's the very first page in your town report, and read that tribute to Fred. I don't know if he's here tonight. I didn't see him on a preliminary scan, but thank you so much for raising that, Valerie.
And that photo was taken by our very own Mark Bouvier.
Excellent. All right. Back to the articles at hand. Not seeing any questions or comments on Article 5, I will move on to Article 6. Will the voters adopt the proposed 2022-2023 fiscal year Arts, Parks, and Recreation Department budget in the amount of $320,546, with $221,246 to be raised by taxes through a tax rate set by the Select Board on the 2022 grand list, sufficient to raise that $221,246. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I'd also like to point out that with these budgets, there are department reports that folks can go to read more about what's behind some of those budget figures and the work that they paid, the current budgets paid for, and looking ahead.
Thank you, Valerie. Those reports are really informative, and I encourage people to go look at them. It really fills us in on exactly what you said, what those departments have been up to and the good works. I think they spent time putting them together for us, and they're really worth a read. I'm going to move on to Article 7. Will the voters adopt the proposed 2022? Oh, I'm going to pause for a second, and Valerie, you be prepared after I finish reading to address that one line that's in there inadvertently. So Article 7, will the voters adopt the proposed 2022-2023 fiscal year general fund operating budget in the amount of $957,425, subject to modification by actions on the previous articles, with $765,641 to be raised by taxes through a tax rate set by the Select Board on the 2022 grand list, sufficient to raise $765,641. Valerie?
Recording stopped.
Oops. Sorry about that. Let's see.
Recording in progress.
Hit the wrong button. Yes. So it had been the tradition for the operating budget article to be the very last article, so that a number of other articles that might affect the bottom line budget were decided ahead of time or in advance of that. But in recent years, the Select Board decided to move that article up, so that, because recognizing that during traditional town meetings, sometimes people couldn't stay for the whole meeting, or they couldn't stay because of childcare or whatever, because they went into the evenings. And so they decided to move that article up so that more people had an opportunity to participate in the discussion. But we forgot or overlooked changing that word previous to perhaps subsequent.
Thank you, Valerie. Does anybody have any questions or comments? And I will comment, if you happen to be reading along on these warrant articles, there is a typographical error. It's the 2022 grand list, not the grant list.
Yeah, darn spell check didn't catch that.
Questions or comments? Not seeing any questions or comments, I'm going to move on to Article 8. Will the voters authorize the transfer of $30,000 of the June 30th, 2021 General Fund Undesignated Fund balance to the Capital Building Fund? Any questions or comments on Article 8?
I'll just hop in on this. Citizens might have noticed this past year some work being performed, exterior work at Holly Hall and at the library to do very serious and significant roof repairs and the bell tower repair. And that reflects some accumulation of deferred maintenance. And the select board has made a commitment to put more resources toward maintaining our historic buildings and making a regular plan for regular ongoing maintenance. And the recreation department has been instrumental in helping to orchestrate a lot of this. And so you'll probably see more like paint needs to be done. The library needs to be seriously repainted and more roof repairs on the horizon. So this is a really important contribution to that fund.
Thank you, Valerie. Does anybody else have a comment or a question? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move on to Article 9. Article 9, will the voters authorize the transfer of $52,500 of the June 30th, 2021 general fund undesignated fund balance to the Capital Road Fund? Any comments or questions?
I can hop in here also that there are a number of major road projects on the horizon. The Notch Road, Basin Street, Lower Hardscrabble Road. And those are projects that may or may not receive grant funding. In fact, Notch Road and Lower Hardscrabble Road will not be eligible for grant funding. So that will all need to be handled locally, and being able to put this funding aside in a reserve fund enables us to build up the resources to do these things locally without having to borrow. And meanwhile, it will earn a little bit of interest.
Thank you, Valerie. Does that raise any questions or thoughts for anybody else? If you want to tell us about what pothole needs to be filled? No. All right. Moving on to Article 10. Will the voters authorize the transfer of $25,000 of the June 30th, 2021 general fund undesignated fund balance to the capital paving project? Oops, capital paving fund. That's where my pothole comes in. Any questions or comments about that? And I was kidding about naming your favorite pothole.
I can pop in on here too. It probably goes without saying that paving is an ongoing annual exercise, and so making sure that we have enough funding to get that work done is important, and that gets back to potholes. So we want to stay ahead of the potholes. And just as an aside, since this question does come up almost on a yearly basis, for folks that get vehicular damage from hitting a pothole, it's been determined that the town is not responsible for the vehicular damage to your as a result of a pothole. That potholes are deemed an act of nature, and that it's the town could fill it one day, and a good rain gush can pop it out the next day, and it's not that the town didn't try. So anyway, just thought I'd make that little plug in anticipation of mud season and spring.
Thank you again, Valerie. Anybody else want to weigh in on potholes and paving?
We have a hand up from Krista.
Great. So Krista, when you speak, I'm going to let you go ahead, but please state your first name, your last name for our minutes, and also state the town where you are a resident.
Hi, thank you, Jennifer. I'm Krista Siringo. I am a resident of Bristol. My camera's not working, otherwise I would pop my face in there. So thanks. You said we could ask about a previous article, or it's not really a question, but it's more of a comment on the previous article. And when Valerie mentioned Basin Street, my ears perked up because that's where we live. And just a plug for those of us that have to navigate Basin Street and try to pop up from Basin Street up onto Main Street that we would just absolutely love that to be addressed at some point. So thanks for mentioning that it's on the list, and we really hope to see it get addressed sometime soon.
Thank you very much, Krista.
If I can, moderator, I'd like to follow up on that.
Sure, go ahead, Valerie.
Yeah. Actually, next week is a grant application deadline for the Downtown Transportation Fund. It'll be the second year that I've applied for it. We didn't get funding last year. I've also applied to other VTrans grant application sources for improvements to Basin Street. We received, we had an updated study done in 2019 from Green Mountain Engineering, studying the slope off of Main Street there and Basin Street. And they came up with some recommendations to adjust the slope of Basin Street, develop a landing for safe passage on and off of Basin Street, and also stabilize the slope. And a project of that sort would also help address some stormwater issues, because folks might have noticed that the sidewalk on Main Street there above the slope has failed more than once because of stormwater and sloughing and other things. And so this project is aimed at addressing the Basin Street slope, public safety, handicapped accessibility, improving the sidewalk accessibility, improving stormwater management. And so there are multiple different funding sources that we might be able to pull together into a package, but it depends on timing. It depends on the competition that we're up against. Hopefully, with all this attention on roads and stormwater and investing in our infrastructure, we'll be able to successfully put a package together, but I'll make every effort possible to make that happen. Another important feature of this is Basin Street is the only vehicular access to the septic system that serves the downtown. And in the wintertime, that's extremely hazardous. So there are a lot of reasons to make this project happen. And the current budget estimated for this project, based upon that study plus other factors, is $770,000. So it's a big chunk of change, and it's going to take a lot of effort to make a package happen. So my ears perked up when I heard Mari Cordes talk about more money for transportation and roads for small towns.
Thanks, Valerie. Crossing fingers.
Anyone else want to weigh in? We've gone back to the road fund, but we were just talking about the capital paving fund. Any other questions or comments? I see a hand up, Peter Morrow-Meyer and Alice Leeds. I saw Peter first, so I'm going to call on Peter if you would state your name first and last and your town of residence. And I got to say, you're muted. How many times will I say that tonight?
Okay, I'll start again. It's actually Katie Raycroft Meyer, because I had to change the name on that little screen, but we don't have to go into that now. But I wanted to follow up on the Basin Street issue, and I was wondering, could any ARPA money get applied to that project? Local ARPA money.
It would definitely be eligible. A committee has been formed, an advisory committee has been formed. Their first meeting will be next Monday to review the list of options and requests and suggestions. And I expect that'll be on the list. Where it ends up at the end of the day, it'll be ultimately up to the select board, but with input from this committee. And the committee will also be doing, we haven't talked about the details yet, but I expect the committee plans to do some public outreach to get comments from the community.
Okay, because I think that's a great project to focus on anyways. And I was going to be on that committee, but I just don't have the time. Anyways, but good luck. Thanks.
But you can participate as a citizen.
Right, okay.
Katie, can you tell us your town of residence?
My town of residence is Bristol.
Great, thank you so much. All right, Alice Leeds, if you could state your first name, last name, and your town of residence.
Thanks, Jennifer. Alice Leeds, I live in Bristol. And the talk about the sidewalks just got me wondering. I do a lot of walking around town. I live in the village. And I noticed there's some streets that, like on Church Street, there's there are certain places where the water really pools up and they get icy and treacherous, and then you have to kind of cross into the street when whether it's rainy or icy. And I just wondered if there's any plan or, if there's anything going on with those. Thank you.
Ian, I wonder if you want to take that question and give an update on the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee and what they might have coming up.
Sure. There is a new committee that has had 2 meetings so far. It's the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. It's an official town committee now, and it came out of an ad hoc committee that a group of residents put together and then came and presented to the select board. Their mission was sort of focused on pedestrian accessibility and bicycle safety for the town, and they had a number of different directions that they presented to the select board. The new committee will continue that work, and at the last meeting, which was just a few days ago, last week, I made the suggestion of a sort of sidewalk inventory. The town is looking for one of those anyway, just in terms of being able to get projects in order for many years to come. And so I'm hoping that that committee would work on addressing some of the things that you mentioned, Alice, in terms of conditions of sidewalks, as well as, how, if they hold water, things like that. So I'm hoping that committee, along with the town and the Public Works Department, would be able to work together to sort of address some of those issues, and then be able to give us sort of hopefully produce a roadmap to be able to update those in the future.
Right. I took the initiative to share my screen. What I'm showing here is an inventory and a sidewalk replacement plan developed by Peter Coffey, I think, in 2017. So hopefully this committee can put some eyes on this and help update it and set some priorities for us. And Church Street is way down below. But we've already made progress, I should say. Much of this work has been done already. And this year, East Street is slated to be replaced on the north side.
Thank you, Valerie. I've noticed that when people use the reactions raise hand, it moves their screen for me to my upper left hand corner, which makes it really easy for me to identify when somebody wants to speak. So if you can use that little icon, it's the reaction icon. At the bottom of that, it says raise hand. I'm doing it now. That's really helpful, but you can also just raise your hand, but it makes it easier for me to see you. Right now, Alice still has her hand up. Did anyone else want to speak to the paving or the road fund before I move on? And Alice, did you have another question? She's taking her hand down. So the other tip is, once you're finished talking, you want to take your hand down, hit that raise hand button again, and it takes you right off. All right, moving on. Article 11. Will the voters authorize the transfer of $20,000 from the June 30th, 2021 General Fund Undesignated Fund balance to the Reappraisal Reserve Fund? Any questions or comments? I see someone by the moniker Swiftwater has raised their hand. So if you would please unmute and then state your first name, last name, and town of residence, and go ahead.
Yes, hi. This is Jennifer Swiftwater Bianock, and I live here in Bristol. And my apologies. First of all, can you hear me okay? I guess you can hear me okay, huh?
I can hear you fine. For the minutes, could you
Okay.
spell your last name?
Sure. That's V as in Victor, YHNAK. And
Great.
my apology is regarding being a little slow. I actually had a comment for the issue just before this one. Would it be appropriate and acceptable for me to make a comment on the sidewalk? Is that all right? If not, then I'll just withdraw my hand. That's okay.
It's perfectly fine, Jennifer, to make that comment. As I said, technology hampers us all, so I want this to be an inclusive meeting, everybody to have their voice heard. Please go ahead and comment on the sidewalk issue.
Okay, great. Thank you. So my question regards, I live here on Mountain Street, and there's a sidewalk, of course, that goes right along my property on the road of Mountain Street. And I have a wonderful old growth tree right on my property that picks the sidewalk up a little bit. And I was wondering, does anyone know if when the replacement of the sidewalks happens, do they have to cut down trees that might, cause the sidewalk to raise as the tree grows? I would be heartbroken if I had to lose that beautiful ancient tree on my property, because that was actually one of the main reasons why I bought my home.
Thank you, Jennifer. Is there anyone who can answer that question?
The short answer is sometimes. I think we can make choices and decide what's more important at a particular point in time. Maybe I'm not familiar with your specific location. Maybe there's an opportunity to carve out around the tree and just have the sidewalk be an odd shape at that location. It really depends, and it might also depend on just the sequencing on where that section of sidewalk is on the schedule for replacement. It might be far enough out in time that I don't know, the conditions might have changed with the health of your tree at that point.
Right. Well, I just one more follow-up comment, if I may, and that would be that if they have to cut into the root that is underneath that part of the sidewalk, I would be okay with that. If that would alleviate the problem, just as long as I could have that wonderful shade tree. And so anyway, all right. I just wanted to put that out there because I recognize some of us are very attached to certain features on our land, and I'm very attached to my ancient tree.
One thing that came to light a few years ago when Vermont Gas was proposing to come through town, many people came out and spoke passionately about their trees and concern about how construction of a gas line would affect Bristol street trees. And it's very clear that Bristol residents love their street trees. And the town has also made a commitment to spend more annually on maintenance of trees, both removal of ones that should be removed, perhaps hazardous ones, and also replacing those trees. So a new committee is in the process of being formed, kind of an outgrowth of the Emerald Ash Borer group that are going to look at, I shouldn't say developing, because we have a street tree plan that was developed in 2014 or 2015, but it hasn't seen much light of the day. It's been collecting dust up until recently with the Emerald Ash Borer group being active, and now the energy to address replacement of Bristol's ash trees. So folks are focused on studying what trees are appropriate to be replaced in what locations. But Bristol also has a very committed tree warden, and that tree warden would be consulted in any situation where a tree might be compromised by a project, and maybe the tree warden can present alternatives, and maybe a tree could survive being having a root amputated, because maybe it would have enough other solid root structure to survive.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate your comments.
Great, thank you. I see another hand up, Richard Butts. I would pronounce that correctly. If you would give your first, last name and town of residence, and go ahead.
Richard Butts, and it's town of Bristol. And I live down the hill from the previous speaker at the corner of Mountain and East Street. And I'm not going to go into details, but I'd like to know who should I talk to about drainage problems we've been having increasingly with the kind of storms, snow, freeze, melt, rain. Last week, we got about 6 inches of water in our basement that came down the sidewalk on Mountain Street and right into our basement. So not belaboring it tonight, but who do I talk to about that?
That's an interesting question. My first thought would go to our Public Works Department, because there might be a failure of a culvert or an inlet somewhere, or there might be a slope, or maybe there's something they can do. I don't know. It depends on the situation.
So should
that
I
might be a
talk,
good,
should I talk to Eric?
yeah, that would
Yeah.
be my suggestion as a first place to start.
Okay, thank you.
I think, Richard, I think part of that issue, I walked that sidewalk as snow was melting and saw it pouring over the sidewalk. So it definitely is a public works call. And part of it too, I think, is just the amount of snow that we had in the buildup over culverts and culverts being blocked. But I definitely think there could be some work done on that side of the sidewalk where your house is. So that's a future thing that we need to look at.
Thank you.
Richard, by the way, you're not only at the bottom of the other street, you're at the top of Basin Street too.
Right.
And while I've got your attention, Richard, and I mentioned the replacement of the East Street sidewalk, I know that you have some delightful plantings right up there. So we will consult with you and with the tree warden and to get your input on how best to manage that sidewalk replacement on your.
Bless you. Thank you.
Yes. We want to have as little impact as possible.
No, that's great. Thank you. My wife will be very happy.
And the fence too.
Yeah.
But I trust that the folks that we hire will know what they're doing.
The people who did the corner really were very, very considerate. The
Okay.
corner replacement. They were great.
Excellent.
Jen, you're muted.
I'm muted. Okay. Thank you so much. Love technology. No. All right, moving on to Article 12. Will the voters authorize the transfer of $22,500 from the June 30th, 2021 General Fund undesignated fund balance to the Fire Department Apparatus Reserve Fund? Any questions or comments on Article 12?
Apparatus, by the way, refers to vehicles. Fire trucks, pumpers.
Okay, seeing no questions or comments on that, I will move on.
Hang on a
Article-
minute, Jennifer, please.
Oh, great. What do we got?
I just want to, Peter Heffernan, Select Board. Just want to make it clear that this money in the last four articles, Article 8 through 12, does not raise taxes. It's money that's left over from last year's budget, or the previous year's budget, I believe, not last year's budget. And rather than take tax dollars to bolster these funds, we take the undesignated fund balance to bolster these funds. That way we can do it without, and hopefully take care of some of our issues without raising taxes, to get more money in these funds, if that makes sense.
I see a lot of heads nodding. Did anyone have any questions or comments that are generated by Peaker's information? Okay, not seeing any. I will move on to Article 13. Will the voters appropriate the following sums to be placed in various town reserve fund accounts as noted? The Capital Building Fund, $30,000. The Capital Fire Equipment Fund, $25,000. The Capital Fire Vehicle Fund, $100,000. The Capital Highway Equipment Fund, $135,000. The Capital Road Fund for construction, $40,000. The Capital Road Fund for paving, $135,000. The Capital Sidewalk Fund, $40,000. The Conservation Fund, $10,000. The Reappraisal Fund, $15,000. And the Technology Fund, $7,000, for a total of $537,000. Any questions or comments? Valerie, go ahead.
It might be worth noting the reappraisal fund. Folks might recall that it seems like just not too long ago that Bristol went through a town-wide reappraisal, and Bristol, like many other towns throughout Vermont, are finding that they're I'm going to get the terminology wrong, but common level of appraisal is reaching a threshold of where a townwide reappraisal would be necessary because of the disparity between the market value and the appraised values of properties. And it's largely driven by, the climate refugees coming to Vermont, and the pandemic refugees coming to Vermont, buying properties at inflated prices. And so it's creating this gap that townwide reappraisal needs to address. And dozens and dozens of communities are in the same position. And so we're going to find ourselves competing for professionals to help do this work. So the sooner we can get on it, the better. And the funding towards the reappraisal fund will help us get a jump start. And it's going to be a multi-year effort. So it's not like we have to build it all up at once.
Thank you, Valerie. Anyone else want to comment or have a question?
Question from Richard.
Oh, great. Go ahead, Richard. Again, just repeat your name and residence for the record.
Richard Butts again, Bristol. Just very quickly, on any of these categories, if they involve purchase of vehicles, I'd like very much for the town to begin considering electric vehicles or electric hybrid vehicles. Thank you.
That's definitely the case in the police department with their capital vehicle plan.
That's exciting, Valerie. Anybody else have any questions or comments on Article 13? Okay, seeing no more questions or comments, I'm going to move on to Article 14. Article 14 is the warning about the Lincoln Town Elementary School departing the Mount Abraham Union District. And I want to acknowledge that this is a topic that many in our community do feel very passionate about. And I recognize that there are going to be some tensions here. Tonight is an opportunity for people to comment so that others in the community can hear them. I want to remind you, this is not a debate. No one can amend this article. There will be no consensus that we're attempting to reach. And this will be voted either thumbs up or thumbs down tomorrow at the polls. Because this is a select board meeting, there may be people in attendance tonight who are from the town of Lincoln or other towns who wish to speak. I'm going to ask that people who are residents and voters in Bristol be invited, or I'm inviting them to speak first before people from other towns speak, because this is our town's issue and our town's vote. But we will certainly also open the floor for folks from other towns who want to be heard. If it seems like a lot of people want to be heard, I'm going to alternate between people who are for or in favor of this warning and people who want to speak against it, so that we have one speaker from each side, just to keep this an even conversation. So I'm going to read the article. It's Article 14. Shall the voters of the town of Bristol ratify the town of Lincoln's vote of August 24th, 2021 to withdraw the town of Lincoln from the Mount Abraham Unified School District, MAUSD? I will go ahead and open the floor to anyone who has a question or wants to speak. Last week, we had a member of the Lincoln town who wanted to speak to us. I'm not hearing, oh, there's someone. I'm going to go ahead and recognize Alice Leeds. Go ahead and state your first and last name and again, your town of residence, Alice. And don't forget to unmute.
Thanks, Jennifer. I'm Alice Leeds. I live in Bristol Village. And as some of you probably know, I taught in Lincoln for 25 years, and you may not know, I also worked for the whole school district as a curriculum person for several years in there. And I just wanted to say that both working at Lincoln, living in Bristol, and traveling to many of the schools in my curriculum work, I noticed that there is a very distinct personality to each school, and that every town has created that. And I know that that's happened here in Bristol. I know many of the teachers that have been here over the years, and I know that in Lincoln, we worked very hard to create a school that was not always considered one of the better schools around, and it became stronger from relating, from an increasingly strong relationship with the community. And that community now really wants to save the school. So I know there are strong views on the schools, but I hope that we can honor the request of Lincoln to preserve what it's really built up over many, many years, so that the children can continue to benefit there. And my understanding from the study of the different schools is that the different plans for how to respond is that what the elementary schools do is not nearly going to be as impactful on the whole as the what happens with the high school. So I respectfully would love to see people support Lincoln's request. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alice. Is there anybody else who would like to speak, to ask a question, or to add a comment? I see Paul Forlenza has his hand up. Paul, I know you're a resident of Lincoln, so I asked Bristol folks to speak first, and I see Krista Siringo has her hand up. I know she's a resident of Bristol, so I'm going to call on Krista first. I see Sue White, you have your hand up, but I'll put you next in the hopper. Krista, go ahead and unmute yourself and say your first, last name, and town of residence for the minutes, please.
Hi, this is actually Brendan Gallivan. I live in Bristol.
Great.
And my comment is, I think it's interesting, and I guess in all the conversations about this, that we talk about community, and I find it really interesting that we are so parochial and tribal that our town is our community. And it's just interesting, in Vermont, all these towns are so small that none of them could survive without each other. Bristol would not be able to survive without the surrounding towns, and vice versa. And I think it's the wrong direction to go to, get tribal and, not join together to maintain what's important to all of us. And I think, breaking away and having Lincoln do their own thing is going to be detrimental to the whole community. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your perspective with us. I'm going to call on Sue White, who's got her hand up next, and go ahead, say your first, last name, and your town of residence.
Hi, my name is Sue White. I live in Lincoln, and I'm going to drop into the chat the Save Community Schools website, which has lots and lots of detailed information around the research that we've done over the last more than 18 months pursuing this plan. This plan was born not out of wanting to leave the district. It was born out of the really special things that go on at the Lincoln Community School and wanting that to continue for the children in our community. Tax implications are minimal, and we feel like it's a strong plan. It will hold up. We're part of MAUSD as far as where our older students will go, and we ask for your support. We supported this as a community 3-1 in August, and we feel like it's a strong plan that's backed by our community, and we ask for the other 4 towns to support us in that. So thank you. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Sue. Does anyone want to speak against the article as I read it? Not seeing another hand at the moment. I'm going to go ahead and give the floor to Paul Florenza. Go ahead, Paul, unmute yourself, state your first and last name and your town of residence.
Sure. I'm Paul Forlenza. I live in Lincoln. I'm on the Lincoln Select Board and the Lincoln Select Board liaison to the Save Community Schools, which was the group that Sue was just talking about. I don't have much to add. I think Sue did a great job. Other than to say, we are interested in being able to make our own decisions about the school, about our students, about our budget, about who are the members of our school board. And I don't say that with any malice at all towards the district. We just happen to think that there are lots of challenges in the district, and being only 2 of 13 board members on the district has really minimized our ability to speak, and that will be further minimized when and if the merger with Addison Northwest happens. So, like Sue, I hope you'll vote to ratify our withdrawal. We've put an enormous amount of work on it, and I think we're into month 15. So this is not something that a town does lightly. There was an enormous amount of thought that went into this, and a lot of discussion with parents and community leaders and educators and the school district superintendent and business office, as well as people in other towns. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul, for sharing. Now, I have 2 hands up. I think it's Mr. Gallivan under the name Krista Seringo. I do want to give everybody an opportunity to talk. If you still want to speak, I will let you speak again last. But if you don't want to speak, just use that button that says raise hand, click it again, and that'll take your hand down. I see Dave Sharp has got his hand raised. I can't recall whether you're a resident of Bristol. I'm also offering someone who wants to speak against Article 14 to speak next if they would like to. And if that's not you, Dave, I'll just ask you to hold on for a second before I acknowledge you.
It is me.
It is you. Then, Dave, I'm going to say no other hands are up. Why don't you go ahead, give your first and last name and state your town of residence and speak.
Dave Sharp. I live in Bristol. I am a member of the MAUSD school board from Bristol. The thoughts I have are strictly my own thoughts and are not representative of the board in any way. So the board has voted to keep schools open unless there is a vote of the town to close the school. So there is a clear, and the consultant that we hired also indicated that closing schools is a significant problem. So it's a board's commitment, and it's my hope that that we maintain all 5 of our elementary schools. And I think that the quality of education, particularly at the high school, will be harder to maintain as we lose students. Now we've lost students just demographically over the years, but we'll lose some more students depending on whose estimates you might think are correct, and the action of a future Lincoln board in terms of where Lincoln High School students attend. But in any event, we will lose some. The likelihood was we will lose some additional students because some Lincoln students will go elsewhere and not go to Mount Abe. And so that makes it difficult to maintain programming at Mount Abe and deliver quality education to the rest of Mount Abe's students. I also think eventually trying to maintain 2 school districts in our 5 towns, a Lincoln School District and the remaining 4 towns in the Mount Abe School District, will become more costly for all taxpayers. And so I think both in terms of cost and the ability to deliver quality education, it's best if we stay together as a 5-town district. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave, for sharing that perspective. Does that raise any thoughts for anyone else? Anyone who would like to make a comment or perhaps ask a question at this point? I see someone with a screen name Terry has raised their hand. Terry, I'm going to acknowledge you to speak. Please unmute yourself, state your first and last name and town of residence, and then go ahead.
Hi, this is Terry Mayer Thompson. I'm from Bristol. And my question is kind of piggybacking on what Dave was just talking about. And I hear pros and cons, and I'm wondering, is there anybody that can speak to the financial piece of this? What does can anyone quantify what we would potentially lose financially for funding if there were less students at, let's say, Mount Abe because Lincoln is choosing not to send students? Is there any way to quantify financially what kind of money we're talking about so that I can have a ballpark understanding? And I know it's hypothetical, but the numbers would help.
Thank you, Terry. So the question being, is there a figure, what would it cost this Mount Abe school district or what would the Mount Abe school district lose if they lose the students coming in from Lincoln? And I see Paul Florenza has his hand up and Dave Sharp has his hand up. Both people, I'm just going to go by first come, first serve. Paul, go ahead and speak first. And then Dave, you're up next. And then Sally Burrell, you're up next. So Dave, go ahead, repeat your name, first, last, and town of residence, and then go ahead.
Sure, Paul Forlenza in Lincoln. That's a really good question. And fortunately, back in September of last year, Superintendent Reen and Floyd Davison, the business manager, made a presentation to the board that said a couple of things. One is they said there'd be no significant impact on taxes for the other towns. They had 3 options, and the options had to do with the governance structure. On options 1 and 2, there would be an increase of less than 1/2 of a cent. And on options 3, there would be a decrease of less than 1 cent. The superintendent and the business manager also estimated that 85% of the kids in Lincoln who are middle schoolers and high schoolers would continue to go to Mount Abe. That was not a calculation we did. That was a calculation they did, and we have no reason to dispute that. So there would continue to be income coming in because Lincoln would be responsible for the tuition of those students. I'm not sure if there's another part to your question or not, but I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Paul. Dave Sharp, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself, state your name again for the record and town of residence, and go ahead and speak.
Yes, Dave Sharp from Bristol. So in the December meeting that the Save Our Schools people had in Lincoln, they estimated 70% of students would attend Mount Abe. The district did do some calculations based on 85%. So if there are, and I believe there are somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 Lincoln students attending Mount Abe currently, if it's 15%, that's 15 kids. Each child generates a tax capacity of $20,000. So, and the average cost of a teacher is around $100,000. I'm using rough numbers, estimates. So that would be 5 pupils, fewer pupils from Lincoln would result in one teacher, one less teacher at Mount Abe. If it is 85% of 100 kids, that's 15 kids, and that is 3 teachers. So I think, you know, the numbers are very tentative, and it depends a lot on what method Lincoln chooses to educate its middle and high school students. The Save Our Schools group has not been forthcoming about how they plan to educate those students, deferring rather to a future Lincoln School Board to make that decision. So we don't know really how many students from Lincoln will come to Bristol. I do think that regardless of what estimates you use, there will be some number of fewer students from Lincoln coming to Bristol. And in the long run, Lincoln will have to run its own central office and its own superintendent and finance office and so forth, special ed director. Mount Abe district, the other 4 towns are going to continue to have to support those services. All of that costs money. And we have a declining demographic of students expected at the middle and high school level in the coming 10 years. So any way you look at it, I think it's going to be difficult to fund our schools, and we're going to be asking more of our taxpayers, and to divide off 1 or more towns in their own school districts with reducing the number of students going to Mount Abe will make it more difficult and more costly to run our educational system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave. I'm going to recognize Sally Burrell next. Please unmute yourself, state your first and last name, town of residence, and then go ahead and speak.
Sally Burrell from Bristol. I'm not going to be able to talk about financials at all, but I have other things that feel like quantities and quantifying. And I spent a lot of time in Lincoln, living there, and also working at the school, and a lot of volunteering at the school and the preschool, and really got to know the community and how much effort they put into building up their community there. And so I have a deep love for Lincoln's community school, and I'm in Bristol now, and I love Bristol. I'm so happy to be in Bristol. And some of the things that I think about, I mean, the reason I came to Bristol was so that I could walk to work and walk and bike and not use my car as much. And I got on the energy committee. I've been really interested in energy. And one of the things that is really important, I think, for kids to learn young is that they have the ability to have their own mobility to go places, like ride their bike or walk to school. And I think that is really important, to be close to school. I love seeing all the Bristol kids walking to school and biking. And I think that's important for our climate down the road, is to really be close to home, learn to live really close in our neighborhoods, and, love the plants and animals and trees and all that kind of thing close to home. It's really what we need to do, I think. So local is big for me. The other thing is the districts. I mean, it used to be that there were 5 separate elementary school boards, and I think that was really healthy for school boards to be able to work with what they knew was going on in their school. And it does seem like there has been a loss with that kind of representation for kids by bringing all those, bring it all into one board. That's about all I want to say, but I am definitely going to support Lincoln, especially the thing that really I think a total surprise to Lincoln and to everyone, even to the school board. I think that they were going to be they were going to be closed. And I think if somehow right after that, that proposal was taken back and they said, okay, we realize it's really important, everyone can have their own school. If that happens soon, but it didn't happen. And I think a lot of trust was lost. And I'm sad to see that. And I support Lincoln's need to leave in order to get their own representation. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Sally. So I see 2 hands raised right now. One is under the screen moniker Krista Seringo. I don't know if that's Mr. Gallivan who spoke earlier or if that's a new speaker. I did say that I wanted everyone to have a chance to speak before I gave someone a second chance, which means I'm going to move on to Donna Bailey, then come back to you under Krista Seringo. So Donna Bailey, if you could unmute yourself, state your first and last name and your town of residence, and then go ahead and share.
Hi, I'm Donna Bailey, and I live in Bristol. Used to live in Lincoln. And so I'm sitting here listening to all of this, and I keep thinking, in a democracy, why would we vote against a town's vote? But Lincoln has voted for this, and I think it's really critical that we support the town's vote. So that's my bottom line for me. But I also think if things don't work out, then we have the opportunity to talk more and vote again. And that's the beauty of living in a democracy. So, and I just want to thank Lincoln for making so many of us think about the education of our children, because I think we have work to do. So I support Lincoln. Thanks.
Thank you, Donna, for sharing your thoughts with all of us. I'm going to go to the person who's under the screen name Krista Seringo. And if you would like to unmute and go ahead and say your first and last name and town you're from.
Hi, this is Krista. That was my husband, Brendan, earlier. And
okay.
It's me now, Krista Seringo from Bristol. I am a school board member representing Bristol, but I am speaking on behalf of myself. Of course, I'm definitely influenced and impacted by my experience as a board member, but I am not speaking as a representative of the board, just as a Bristol community member. And I guess I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts. One thought that I don't think has been raised before with respect to potential impact on the rest of the district were Lincoln to withdraw is the loss of the Lincoln community in our education system. And I actually would disagree with Mr. Forlenza when he said that their voice on our board has not been well heard. I think that the Save the Community Schools group has provided all of us with the opportunity to really think deeply and look critically at the education we offer our students and the way we do that. And through their advocacy and work, we have invested in a process that I think in the end, we're all going to benefit greatly from. We've really had the opportunity to explore different options in a much more deep way and learn some really valuable things about how to move forward without having to close our elementary schools. And that, I think, is in large part due to the advocacy of the Save Community Schools group. And I'm really grateful for that. And I think it demonstrates a potential loss that we will feel when Lincoln is not part of our community. The community lines don't really begin and end at a town. They go beyond that. And I think that in addition to the strong community support that we've seen from Lincoln that can all benefit from, we're also going to lose a lot of veteran teachers and our most veteran building principal. And their input as we figure out how to move forward with our district, not having them at the table is going to also be a loss. So I don't believe that closure is imminent any longer. I understand why that seemed so early on, but I don't believe we're in that place now. And it saddens me to think that we might move forward in a new direction without our neighbors and friends, because I really do think they add a lot, and you can't quantify it in the way you can quantify tax rates. And so I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Krista, for adding some new perspectives to this community conversation. I see that Sally Burrell has her hand up again, but since she's spoken once, I want to give anyone else an opportunity to speak who hasn't spoken yet but would like to. Not seeing anyone else raising their hand, I'm going to go ahead and return. Sally Burrell, you can unmute yourself and state first, last name, town of residence, and then go ahead and speak.
Sally Burrell, Bristol. I actually just had a question. I maybe haven't kept up as well as I thought, but is the idea that all schools will not be closed? I mean, all elementary schools will not be closed, or is there still a chance that elementary schools could be closed? I guess I might not be.
So I think the question was, is there a chance, or is there new news out there that a definitive that all elementary schools will remain open? Is there anyone here who might be able to answer that question? I see a hand up, two hands up. I'm going to go with a Bristol resident first. Sorry, Paul. Krista, you go ahead and take the floor, unmute, state your name again and town of residence, and then go ahead.
Krista Seringo, Bristol. Again, I'm going to share my thoughts just as an individual. I'm not at all saying what I believe the entire board's going to do. But I will say that we have a report in front of us that offers lots of different options for sustaining the future of our district without closing any elementary school. The author of the report also says very clearly that in his varied and wide experience, 9 out of 10 school closures usually fail because they're so hugely unpopular. He also strongly encouraged the board to advocate for ensuring that the Articles of Agreement in Act 46 that provides towns have the right to vote before their school is closed, that we as a board advocate for that to be a part of any potential merger that we might pursue. So for those reasons, I don't believe that a school in our district would be closed without a vote of the town, nor do I think it's an option that the board is interested in, nor do I want to see our board explore that as an option moving forward. And if you listen to board meetings and discussions and conversations, I think that is pretty evident as well.
Thank you very much, Krista, for sharing your thoughts. I know as an individual, not as an official representative of the school board. Paul Forlenza, would you like to speak? Again, first name, last name, town of residence.
Sure. Paul Forlenza from Lincoln. I think with Krista and Dave, we're just going to have to agree to disagree. I have enormous respect for people who serve on boards on a volunteer basis. And this school board has put in an enormous amount of work and has a lot of very difficult questions to wrestle with. The merger committee has not agreed to allow towns to vote if their school is going to be closed. That's sort of the first point. So that puts some time pressures on us, because if they were to decide to merge and come up with an articles of agreement that didn't include the town being able to vote, then we'd be in serious trouble. We would have to, we'd just be in serious trouble. Local control, as others have mentioned, is very, very important. I have enormous respect for Dave Sharp. He was one of the key legislators behind Act 46. I do take exception to his logic that if 5 kids from Lincoln don't go to Mount Abe, that will lose a teacher. The flip side of that, which I think also doesn't work, is therefore if 5 additional new students go to Mount Abe, would that mean we'd have a new teacher? I just don't think that the logic there works very well. And we have the superintendent on record as saying there would be no significant impact either on the taxpayers or on the school district. I wish there had been a provision in Act 46 to study the effectiveness of Act 46. There are multiple goals in Act 46, and it seems to me some of them are not being met at all, which is, I think, unfortunate. So the one other thing I would add is Dave is right. We are going to need some kind of governance structure, and Lincoln and Ripton are in conversations about establishing a joint supervisory union. We're still exploring that. So we'll see how that comes out. We do have some reason to believe that financially that will be viable. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you for keeping the conversation civil. I want everyone to be able to participate in this conversation tonight. Richard Butts, I saw your hand up earlier. You took it down. Did you wish to be heard? You can just shake your head no if you decided not to speak. Thank you, Richard. Krista Syringa, you have already spoken tonight. I want to see if anyone else has something they want to add before I call on you again. And I see Sally Burrell has a hand up, who's also contributed tonight. Is anyone who hasn't spoken wish to be heard? All right, I acknowledge Krista Syringa. If you'll please unmute yourself. Again, I'm going to make you repeat your name, first and last, and town of residence for the record before you speak.
Sure. Thanks, Jennifer. Krista Syringa from Bristol. I just wanted to address one point with regard to the merger study committee, which Mr. Forlenza brought up. And I want to let folks know that this committee has 4 MAUSD board representatives on it. Any recommendation that the merger study committee makes will come to the full MAUSD board for review. And even if our board didn't agree with the recommendation and they still took the not very smart, in my opinion, approach to put it before voters, we would all, in all 5 towns, have to vote on approving a merger. So, and again, in the consultant report that we received that evaluated all of our options, the consultant was very clear that he would not advise us to pursue a merger unless it included the provision of towns having the right to vote before their schools close. So in my opinion, there are a lot of safeguards in place for this merger study committee to not be able to cause undue harm, and the strength and power of our community voice has proven in the very recent past to be really influential, and I have no reason to doubt that it wouldn't be moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Krista. Anyone else want to speak? I see, Richard, you now have your hand up. Ms. Burrell, since you've already spoken twice, I'm going to give Richard Butts the floor. So, Richard, if you want to unmute and go ahead and speak. First and last name and town of residence for the record.
Richard Butts, Bristol. Before I retired, I supervised student teachers in Western New York schools. And one of the things that I noticed as I went back and forth from one school to another was the real difference between communities in which parents were actively involved and communities where they were not actively involved. And one real indicator of that was parent-teacher night. And I came to respect the towns and districts where parents were involved in their school. And what I want to say about that is I have to respect Lincoln, a town that put so much into this process. And I really think we should give them a shot at doing what they feel is very important to their community.
Thank you very much, Richard, for sharing your thoughts tonight. Anyone else wish to speak before I call on Ms. Burrell? All right, I give the floor to Sally Burrell. If you'll unmute yourself again, state your first and last name for our minutes and town of residence, and then go ahead.
Sally Burrell, Bristol. This is just another question. Is the proposal that Patrick put out a couple of
Sally, unfortunately, we're having internet connectivity problems and we did not hear all of what you had to say. Why don't you try it one more time? Unmute first. Again, Sally, you're frozen.
The proposal that Patrick put out. Okay, here we go. I'm going to turn off my video. Can you hear me now without my video?
Yes.
Okay. So is Patrick's proposal that he put out when he put it out in December, is that still on the table or has it been removed?
Thank you, Sally. Is there anyone here who can answer her question? I see one hand raised, and I'll acknowledge Krista Siringo. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Again, first, last name, and town of residence. Thank you. I'm laughing because I just heard my dog barking in the background. I'm going to mute.
Krista Siringo, Bristol. I'm sorry, this is becoming more of a board meeting than a town meeting. I apologize. And I'll do my best to answer Sally's question. So we have a report from Nate Levinson, which evaluated all 6 of the community proposals as well as Superintendent Reen's proposal, and it took out the parts and pieces of all of those proposals and those components. And so now we're at the point as a board of deciding what our next steps are going to be with all of those parts and pieces. And so nothing is off the table yet. But again, I would just say that we have made the commitment to ensure towns have the right to vote before a school is closed. We've made that as commitment as a board. And we've also, heard, as I said, the comment from Mr. Levinson about the unpopularity of closing schools. And we've directed the superintendent to pursue in the immediate term, looking at ways to provide more autonomy to building principals in terms of staffing and budgeting and a cost effectiveness mindset. So we are committed to exploring the options that exist before us, I believe, that don't involve closing schools. That's my own opinion as a board member, not the opinion of the full board.
Thank you very much, Krista. I think we're getting towards the end of this conversation. Before we leave the topic, does anyone else have anything that they are burning to share or ask? I see Paul Florenza has his hand raised. I'm going to just give one more moment to see if there's anyone else who has not yet had a chance to speak. Not seeing anyone else. Paul Florenza, you have the floor. You may unmute yourself. Make you repeat again your name for the record and town of residence.
Paul Forlenza from Lincoln. The MAUSD board did vote on a motion that appears, and I use that word carefully, appears to guarantee towns the ability to vote. However, having checked with an attorney, it really has no legal standing at all. It's got some, for lack of a better term, awkward wording in it. One other issue that we're having difficulty with is as the years continue in the district, Lincoln continues to lose resources. So for instance, our principal is now, instead of being a full FTE, our principal is now a 0.9 FTE. The logic in that I struggle with, because it's clear to me that she's not going to work less hours or put in less time or less effort. So I don't quite understand how that decision can be made when there are decisions being made to spend money on construction projects. Some probably are necessary. And the last thing I'll say is, yes, the consultant has issued a report. In my reading of it, he has not made any hard recommendations, and it's really up to the board to decide what to do. These are decisions that originally were going to be made at the beginning of last year. So it's just one more reason that we really would like to have our own control over the education of our kids. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Before I close out this discussion, does anyone else have anything they wish to add? I see a hand up from Alice Leeds. Alice, I'll go ahead and give you the floor. Again, unmute yourself, then state your first, last name, and town of residence and speak.
Alice Leeds, and I live in Bristol Village. And I just wanted to say, in response earlier, there was the comment that it's a shame to lose kind of the cross-fertilization that exists between the schools. And I have to say, I agree with that. And I think it's a shame that wasn't really thought of much earlier on. Being a teacher in a small school, it's really the opportunity to interact with colleagues. Like I was, there were two of us teaching the same grade when I was there, multi-age grades, some cases just one. So it was really important to collaborate and to share ideas with colleagues in other schools. And I think that my guess is that Lincoln teachers will continue to find ways to do that. And I hope that in the future, when these kinds of issues come up, that communities, broad communities, whole districts really think about that small schools need each other. And it just shows me why Lincoln is really so it's just another marker for why Lincoln is so wants so much to save its school. I don't think it would have been the choice of the community if the community didn't feel a threat and of losing something that is very precious to them. And again, I support Lincoln remaining open. I can't. That's really what I support. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Alice. Anyone else wish to say something? I see an applause. Anyone else have a hand up who would like to say something before I close out this particular topic? I thought I saw a hand. Under Mr. Dyke, did you want to say something?
Yes, I just wanted to say we've
Before you do, just state your first and last name and town of residence, then go ahead.
Lloyd Dyke, Bristol. I'd just like to say we're less than halfway through. A lot of sympathy for the Lincoln cause, but we got work to do.
Thank you very much. I think with that, we're going to move on. Before I read Article 15, I want to turn to our chair of the Select Board, Peter Heffernan, and ask about taking a short sitting recess. Some people have been here since 6:30 for the police district meeting, 2.5 hours. Would it be appropriate to ask for a brief break and then come back to Article 15, or do you want me to plow on?
Yeah, we should probably take a 5-minute break and give people a chance to get up and stretch. Yeah,
Yes.
back on at 9.
Great. So if everybody heard that, we'll be back at 9 o'clock. This is a brief recess. Stretch your legs, go to the bathroom, go to the refrigerator, get yourself something to drink and perhaps a snack. Unfortunately, you can't go to the bake sale table and pick anything up there. Thank you. And when we get back, we'll read Article 15, which is the discussion about opening a retail marijuana shop in Bristol. Thank you. Thank you. We are resuming the town informational session tonight. We have covered Articles 1 through 14, and we are now up to Article 15. I want to thank everyone for really caring about this community and for the civil conversations that we've had tonight. Very appreciated. Article 15, again, I want to recognize the tensions that exist in this community about the presence of a retail cannabis shop and whether to allow that or not. These have been some ongoing discussions between residents of the town. I want to remind everyone that your neighbor is still your neighbor when you leave the meeting tonight. This is not a debate. We cannot make amendments to the article. There will be no vote at the end of this conversation. We're trying to reach consensus. There will be a vote, but that vote will be purely on the article as it was warned, and that vote will happen tomorrow at Holly Hall between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. So again, I'm going to ask folks to keep the conversation civil and not personal. I think everyone did a wonderful job with that in the last conversation. Because voters from other towns are able to speak during a select board meeting, I am going to give first preference to residents of Bristol to speak at this meeting, and I'm going to ask people to alternate in a for and against format for people who are in favor of this article and people who are against this article. I'm going to go ahead and read it. It's Article 15. Shall the town of Bristol permit the operation of licensed cannabis retailers subject to such municipal ordinance and regulation as the select board may lawfully adopt and implement pursuant to 7 Vermont statutes annotated section 863. I'm going to open up the floor to anybody who has questions or comments on Article 15. There were some comments and questions at last Monday's informational meeting. I'm going to still wait another few moments to see if there's anybody who wishes to comment or has questions on Article 15. All right, I'm not seeing any. And again, a question could be written into the community chat if you want to, and I'll read it out loud. But I'm going to move on, and if I see a question, I'll move back to it. If no objections, I will move on to Article 16. Again, if someone wants to comment and because of technological ability wasn't able to weigh in before I moved on to Article 16, I'll acknowledge you to speak on a prior article. Article 16, will the voters approve an appropriation of $153,899.80 for the Lawrence Memorial Library for its annual operating budget, said sum to be raised by taxes? Any questions or comments on Article 16?
I'll just chime in that a question came up at the last meeting last week about the money, and the answer was that these funds are used for the buildings and the department's operating expenses, the heat, the utilities, staff, other day-to-day operational expenses.
Thank you, Valerie. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, Richard. I recognize Richard Butts. Go ahead, unmute yourself again, state first and last name and town of residence and speak.
Richard Butts, Bristol. I just wanted to say that we've got a real gem in the Lawrence Memorial Library, and some of us on the Energy Committee and Select Board member Ian Albertson are working on some ways to maybe make some energy improvements in that building through funds that are becoming available. We did a walkthrough of the building with Efficiency Vermont last week and found some very definite needs in terms of insulation and tightening up. It would make a difference in the operating expenses of that building. And so we're gonna work through, and it's going to be a process to see if we can present to the select board a plan for them to consider to be able to access grant funding to get that building audited professionally, and then a plan underway and funding to accomplish it. It's a really great building and a great resource.
Indeed, it is. Thank you so much, Richard. Would anybody else like to add anything or have a question? All right, I'm going to move on. Article 17. Will the voters appropriate $29,000 for the Bristol Cemetery Association Incorporated in accordance with 24 Vermont statutes annotated section 2691 for the purpose of maintaining Greenwood Cemetery, mowing and trimming in a well-kept manner? Any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, I'll move on. Article 18.
No,
Oh,
if I
please.
can jump in, I see that Donald Lathrop is here, and in case folks didn't have a chance to review the cemetery's report, perhaps Don would be willing to give us an update on what's been going on and just the amazing asset that this facility is to the town.
Great. Thank you so much, Valerie, for pointing that out. Donald, would you like to unmute and state your first and last name, town of residence for the record, and share some information with us?
Yes, I'm Donald Lathrop for Bristol, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. We do have a more landscape company that does the mowing down there, which is, we have about close to 17 acres, I think, that needs to be mowed once a week. And we do have a contractor that does that every week. He doesn't do the complete mowing because it's just too much to do all in 1 week, but some of it doesn't need to be mowed as much as other parts of it. So we do have about, this year, I think we had approximately 30 burials down there, which was a record, I believe. We sell lots. We do both full burials and cremations. And I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody may have.
Great. Thank you so much. Does anyone have a question for Donald? Or other general comments or questions? All right. Thank you very much, Valerie. Thanks for pointing out that Donald was here tonight. It's great to hear from you about the cemeteries. Okay, we're going to move on to Article 18. Will the voters appropriate $10,000 to Bristol Core, Bristol's nonprofit downtown organization committed to increasing and maintaining the economic vitality of the downtown area? Any questions or comments? Valerie, is that a hand you have raised? I can't tell. Or are you giving me a high five? Funny, I see a little white hand on the side of her screen and I have no idea why. Would anybody like to say something or have a question?
It's your cursor. I do the same thing.
Yep, that's my cursor.
Yep.
Oh, technology humor. Nothing like the in-person town meetings. All right, not hearing anything on Article 18. If there are no objections, Articles 19 through 45 are the the requests from social service agencies. Most of them are agencies which have made requests from the town before. These are requests because each town has residents who utilize these services, and so these services ask for contributions. So without any objection, what I intend to do is, instead of reading each individual article in full, which includes the name of the organization, how much they're asking for, and a description of the organization, what I propose to do is read simply the name and the amount, and read all of them, Articles 19 through, I'd say, 45 in one big go, and then let's open it up, and anyone who has questions or comments is welcome to speak. Any objections to me approaching it in this manner? Okay, with one thumbs up and no objections, I'm going to proceed. So Article 19 will begin with, will the voters appropriate $4,000 to the Bristol Family Center? And I'm going to reverse that and go the name of the organization and then how much, and I'm just going to go through this. So I began with Bristol Family Center, $4,000. To the Bristol 4th of July Committee, $6,000. To the Bristol Historical Society, $2,500. To the Bristol Little League, $2,000. To the Bristol Recreation Club, $15,000. To the Bristol Rescue Squad, $13,500. To the Bristol Town Band, $1,200. To NEAT Northeast Addison Television, who's recording this tonight, $3,500. To the Addison Allies Network, $750. To Addison County Home Health and Hospice, $4,700. To the Addison County Parent-Child Center, $4,800. To the Addison County Readers, $2,000. To the Addison County Restorative Justice Services Incorporated, $1,150. To Addison County Riverwatch Collaborative, $300. To Age Well, $2,700. To the Counseling Service of Addison County, $3,875. To Elderly Services to sponsor Project Independence Adult Daycare Health Center, the Daybreak Alzheimer's Care Program, Family Caregiver Support Group, and Aging Education Center, $2,200. For Habitat for Humanity of Addison County, $1,500. To Homeward Bound, Addison County's Humane Society, $1,000. To Hope, Helping Overcome Poverty's Effects, $3,250. The John W. Graham Housing and Services, $1,400. To the Open Door Clinic, $1,000. To RSVP and Green Mountain Foster Grandparent Program, $750. To the Tri-Valley Transit, which was formerly known as the Addison County Transit Resources, $11,306. To Turning Point Center of Addison County, $3,000. To Vermont Adult Learning, $1,650. To Women Safe, $3,500. That's the whole slate. We cannot amend these, but if anybody has any questions or wants to speak to one of these organizations, please do. I'm going to again ask for first and last name, town of residence, but I will add if you're affiliated with any organization that you also mention that organization if you're speaking on their behalf. So opening it up to questions or comments. Giving you time to find the unmute button. Deborah Dickerson commented in the comment chats, bargain, all of those organizations do tremendous work for our community. Thank you, Deborah. I'll just wait a few more seconds for any more comments or questions, or if anybody wants to jump in.
I'm sorry, maybe I can just jump in. I thought I raised my hand, but I don't know if it worked. My name is Mara Donnelly, and I'm a resident of Bristol. And I just have a question about the 4th of July parade. I'm sorry, I've lost which article that is.
I think we all know. Do you need the specific dollar amount? I can read that again.
No, I'm just wondering because we haven't had the parade in the last 2 years, and I believe, if I'm not incorrect, that money has been appropriated the last 2 years. I don't know if there's someone from the parade committee who can speak to this. Why there's funding for, why isn't the previous year's funding being used for this year? I'm just curious about that. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Maura. I'm glad you piped in on that. That's Article 20 for anyone who's following along. Is there anybody here who could perhaps answer Maura's question? Is there anybody here from the Bristol 4th of July Committee?
I don't know if there is, Jennifer, but last year, the funds they used that were appropriated, they used for the fireworks that they set off last year.
And just for the minutes, that was Michelle Purley speaking.
Yes, sorry.
I trained my select board to speak. So, Maura, that was an answer. At least Michelle is aware that the 4th of July committee used the money to pay for fireworks. I'm wondering if we look at the appropriation for last year, you can find, if anyone's curious, in the very back of your town meeting report are the warrant articles for the prior year, which would show what the 4th of July committee requested. It was Article 14 back then, and they requested the same amount, $6,000. I don't hear any other answer for you, Maura, but that was a great question. Anyone else have any questions or want to weigh in? I know that the town band in last Monday's meeting, the same question, maybe not question was raised, but it was discussed that the town band did not, or rather it returned its $1,200 appropriation for the year that it did not meet and play on the Bristol Green. All right, not hearing any other questions, I'm going to generally ask, does anyone have any comments or questions on the town report itself in general? I'd like to acknowledge the authors of the report. I believe Ian Albertson, you were one. There was someone else. I think it's a really excellently organized report, easy to understand and follow. And I saw in the chat comments earlier a compliment to that effect.
Thank you very much. Yes, the report has been one of the things that I'm working with Sharon on, just improving each year and adding more detail to it and also organizing it so that information can be found more easily throughout the report. And I'm always interested in hearing people's comments or questions, or if you find mistakes, please let me know. that can be corrected for our electronic version and then obviously noted for next year. But if you do have suggestions, or if you feel that things are complicated, or if there could be improvements made, please feel free to contact me. I'd love to hear that.
Anybody else have anything they wish to ask or questions, comments about the town report? I see Valerie raising your hand. Go ahead and take the floor.
So I made a comment in the chat, but I'm going to put it out here as well, just to give a shout out to Sharon Lucia, who town clerk. She's been here all day right now, and she'll be here at the break of dawn tomorrow soon and for a very long day. And then after that too, as well, because after a town meeting, then there's more stuff after that of reporting and all this other things. So a shout out to Sharon for doing all of this, and I thank her very, very much.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you. I see hands applauding. I see icons applauding. You can't hear it, Sharon, but it's there. There you are.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you, Sharon, for all that work that you do. Anything
Day in and
else?
day out.
All right, not hearing anything else, I am going to announce the informational meeting of 2022 officially closed. You can find the minutes on the town website. Not immediately, got to give Sharon time to write them, and I hear she's pretty darn busy tomorrow. You can also watch this meeting again on Neat TV if that's what you would like to do. Tell your friends and family they can tune in. And we're going to move on to the regular select board meeting. The select board has 2 agenda items, I believe, left to cover this evening. For those of you who just joined for this town informational session, you can log out now. And I thank you all for your participation. It was really wonderful seeing you all, and go to the polls tomorrow, vote and weigh in on all these interesting things we've discussed tonight. And those of you who want to stay around, you can sit in on the rest of the select board meeting. I'm going to be cutting out. So goodbye, everybody, and good night.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you,
You're
Jen.
very welcome. You're welcome.
Night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
All right, back to regular business. The authorization of warrants and liquor licenses was taken off at the beginning of the meeting. Other business, correspondence, reports and correspondence received. Valerie, do you want to mention the 2 that were there, or?
Well, I just trying to flip through my files here. Under other business, let's see, we had the official letter from Green Mountain Engineering that they were closing shop, which we knew about, but we got their letter, the official letter. But what I do want to draw attention to an email that Brett LaRose shared with us earlier this week, congratulating you, Peeker, for being elected president of the Addison County Firefighters Association. So congratulations, and thank you very much for that. And also to Peter Coffey for having the 2022 ACFA Regional Fire School dedicated in his name, and recognizing Deputy Chief Eric Forand and firefighter James Goodyear for receiving nominations for ACFA awards in their respective positions. So I just wanted to acknowledge those recognitions.
Thank you. Any other business? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Don't forget to vote.
Yep,
forget to
go
vote.
tomorrow, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.